The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with a low growl, its frame shuddering under the drag. Inside, 5 alien students sat rigid in their seats, unaccustomed to the turbulence of a planet with air dense enough to press on lungs like invisible fingers. The viewports showed vast stretches of blue ocean, thunderheads piled high like ramparts, and a strip of land that seemed alive with motion. To them, Earth looked neither refined nor civilized, it looked untamed. Dr. Aaron Corrin, a lizard-skinned scholar who had spent his life studying theoretical ecosystems, narrowed his eyes as the shuttle tilted over mountain ranges capped in snow. "Atmospheric pressure is 20% above my comfort threshold," he muttered, claws drumming against his data slate. "This alone makes the designation Deathworld plausible." "Plausible?" Vorik 10 scoffed, his feathered crest quivering in disdain. The avian scholar had a sharp beak and sharper pride. "It is a grotesque exaggeration. A world cannot be considered civilized if it is simultaneously a killing ground. Humans dramatize their nature to compensate for their primitive standing." Kelric Venn, taller and broader than the others, shifted uneasily. His scaled body betrayed no fear, but his voice carried quiet respect. "You dismiss them too easily, Vorik. Records of their early history alone show a resilience unmatched by most sapients. Perhaps there is merit to their reputation." Ryla Dax, smallest of the group, busied himself with frantic note-taking. His insectoid antennae twitched at every tremor, every hiss of the shuttle's cooling vents. I simply wish to survive the semester," he whispered, mandibles clicking nervously. "If half the stories are true, even the plant life here can kill us." The shuttle jolted as it docked with the sprawling terminal of the Global University for Interstellar Studies. From the viewport, the students saw their first glimpse of humanity not through filtered feeds or archival footage but in raw, living flesh. Men bustled across loading ramps, carrying equipment, guiding transports, or shouting at one another above the din. Their movements were fast, purposeful, and disturbingly to some recklessly casual in a world already bristling with hazards. A figure stood apart from the chaos, waiting with arms crossed. He was human, middle-aged, sun-weathered skin stretched over a lean, muscular frame. His eyes, gray and cold, tracked the students as though measuring them not as pupils but as variables in a calculation. He did not smile. "Professor Marcus Hale," the shuttle pilot announced. "Your guide, guardian, and if you're lucky, savior." The airlock hissed open. Heat rushed inside, thick and heavy, carrying scents that made alien throats tighten: damp soil, oil, pollen, ozone. The gravity pressed down with an unyielding weight, subtle but relentless. Vorik immediately flared his wings in discomfort, glaring at the human who approached without the slightest strain. "You're late," Hale said flatly, voice carrying a rasp like gravel dragged across steel. "Get your things. This isn't a resort. If you can't keep pace, you'll fall behind, and I won't waste time dragging you." The arrogance of the words might have stung, but his tone was not boastful, it was matter-of-fact. The aliens exchanged uncertain glances, each calculating whether they had misjudged the human or if this was merely performance. As they followed him through the terminal, their senses were assaulted by contradictions. The building itself seemed impossibly fragile by galactic standards, glass panes stretched for stories, open-air ventilation systems exposed to microbes, humidity, and allergens. Yet everywhere, humans thrived. They brushed past one another, breathing the reactive atmosphere as if it were nourishment, casually enduring conditions that already strained the alien visitors. Ryla lagged behind, clutching his recorder. "I cannot fathom how they thrive without sealed suits," he murmured. "There are, by my count, billions of bacterial species in every cubic meter of this air." "Billions?" Vorik laughed derisively. "Surely exaggeration." Marcus Hale stopped suddenly, turning to face them. "Not exaggeration," he said, startling them with his acute hearing. "And most of those bacteria are indifferent. A few will try to eat you alive from the inside out. Humanity adapted by fighting them every day of our existence. Those who didn't make it this far." His words landed like stones, heavy and unpolished. He resumed walking without checking if they followed. By the time they reached the campus gates, sweat clung to their scales, feathers, and chitin. Hale seemed unbothered. He paused by a low stone wall overgrown with thorny vines. With one bare hand, he brushed against the thorns, earning a shallow cut. The alien students recoiled at the sight of blood beading on his skin, yet Hale didn't flinch. "Everything here wants to grow, to spread, to feed," he said, holding up his bleeding finger. "Even plants can pierce flesh. This," he gestured to the vines, "isn't considered dangerous. It's decoration." Kelrick swallowed hard. "You keep weapons as ornament." Hale allowed the faintest smirk. "We call it landscaping." He wiped the blood on his trousers and started forward again. The residence halls loomed ahead, stone, metal, and wood reinforced against weather and time. Hale motioned toward them. "Your quarters. Reinforced for your physiology, air scrubbers installed, climate adjusted. Don't grow soft. Once classes begin, adjustments vanish. You'll live on Earth's terms, not the other way around." Erin Corrin, determined not to appear intimidated, finally spoke up. "Professor Hale, I have studied countless environments, from frozen moons to volcanic worlds. Each presents hazards, yes, but they are navigable with preparation. What makes Earth distinct beyond dramatization?" Hale stopped at the threshold of the hall. His eyes, sharp as blades, fixed on Corrin. "Preparation fails here. Predictability doesn't exist. Storms form and vanish within hours. Ground splits open without warning. Animals hunt with intelligence and teeth. Microbes mutate faster than your medicine can adapt. On Earth, control is an illusion. Survival is the default curriculum." For the first time, the group had no retort. Vorok's wings folded tight against his body. Kelrick glanced toward the horizon, where thunderheads gathered like a warning. Ryla scribbled notes so furiously his mandibles clicked. Hale turned away, voice low but carrying an edge that silenced the terminal's background noise in their minds. "You came to study Earth. Remember this, you don't study Earth. Earth studies you." The automatic doors hissed shut behind him, leaving the alien students in a heavy silence, each weighing the reality that their semester had already begun with a lesson none would soon forget. Dawn broke with a red sky, the horizon smeared in fire as though the planet itself were warning its guests. The alien students emerged from their quarters reluctantly, each carrying equipment designed to shield them from what they still believed were exaggerated dangers. Hale was waiting for them, standing with his hands tucked into the pockets of a weather-beaten jacket, a man who looked as if he belonged to the wilderness rather than the lecture hall. "No walls today," he said. "You'll learn more in the open than in any classroom." He led them down a gravel path that cut through the forested edge of the campus. The air was thick with moisture and humming with unseen life. The alien students walked carefully, eyes darting at every rustle, while Hale moved with the ease of a predator in his domain. Erin Corrin tried to maintain scholarly poise, though sweat slicked the edges of his scales. "You call this merely a forest? The air is dense with spores. Half of these would be classified as biohazards on civilized worlds." Hale plucked a leaf from a low branch and crushed it between his fingers, releasing a pungent aroma. "We call it spring. Every breath you take is a gamble. Humans learned to gamble well." Vorok 10 lagged behind, his feathers twitching at the strange shrieks echoing from deeper within the woods. "Your kind thrives by ignoring reason. You romanticize chaos. If this is what passes for normal, no wonder you fear little." Kelrick then moved closer to the professor, curiosity outweighing caution. "And yet you adapt without hesitation. I've read that humans endured ice ages and deserts without aid." "How?" "Not by choice," Hale replied. His eyes swept the canopy, scanning for movement though his tone remained calm. "The world changed faster than we could plan. So we learned to improvise. That's what survival is, responding quicker than nature's attempt to erase you." Ryla Dax paused to adjust his recorder, antennae trembling with every sound. "Improvisation against predators and poisons seems inadequate," he said softly. "Statistically, extinction should have claimed you long ago." Hale glanced back at him. "It tried." He didn't elaborate. The path ended at a wide clearing where the land sloped downward toward a river swollen with rain. The current foamed against jagged rocks, and mist clung to the banks. Hale pointed toward it. Lesson 1. Water sustains life. It also ends it. The aliens stared. To them, rivers were tame, regulated, their flow engineered and predictable. This was a beast roaring in plain sight. Hale stepped onto the slick stones without hesitation, crossing to the far side with a few measured leaps. "Follow," he called. Corran hesitated but moved first, using calculated precision to pick a path. A sudden surge of current splashed over his boots, and he slipped, claws scrambling for purchase. Hale caught him by the wrist and pulled him upright with one arm, as though Corran weighed nothing. "Trust footing, not equations," Hale said, before releasing him. One by one the others crossed, each rattled. Ryler nearly froze in midstream, convinced the water's invisible inhabitants would consume him. Vorik made it across but flared his wings in indignation, muttering about unnecessary risks. Hale said nothing until they were all gathered. He motioned to the sky. Dark clouds rolled overhead, the light dimming though it was still morning. A low growl of thunder followed. Lesson 2. The weather is your enemy and your ally. It moves faster than your senses. Watch. Rain came suddenly, slamming down in heavy sheets. The aliens scrambled for cover, wings and chitin clicking in panic. Hale stood tall, face turned upward, eyes unblinking against the deluge. "This is mild. Wait until the lightning starts." A jagged flash tore across the sky, followed almost instantly by a deafening crack that shook the ground. Ryler collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. Corran swore under his breath. Kelric muttered a prayer in his native tongue. Vorik looked around wildly, his arrogance stripped raw. Hale crouched beside them, voice steady, almost gentle. "Lightning is energy. It kills, yes, but it also powers growth. The forest depends on it, just as humans learned to. We watched fire fall from the sky and decided it would belong to us." He extended his hand into the rain, veins visible under taut skin. "That's what survival means, taking what should kill you and making it a tool." The storm passed as abruptly as it came, leaving steam rising from the ground. The aliens looked less like scholars and more like survivors dragged from wreckage. Hale motioned them onward, deeper into the forest. Hours passed. They encountered insects that bit through protective layers, leaving welts that burned. They saw birds with beaks sharp enough to pierce metal siding. At one point, Hale stopped them, pointing silently at a clearing. A pack of wolves moved through the tall grass, gray shapes rippling with muscle. The predators did not attack, but their eyes fixed on the group with cold calculation. "Early humans hunted these," Hale whispered. "With stone in hand and nothing else." Vorik's feathers bristled in disbelief. "Lies. No creature confronts predators unarmed." Hale's smile was humorless. "And yet you stand on their descendants' planet." The wolves vanished into the underbrush, silent as shadows. The aliens exhaled in unison, realizing only then they had been holding their breath. By late afternoon, exhaustion weighed on them. Hale stopped by the remains of a fallen tree, its trunk split and scarred. He placed his hand on the blackened wood. "Lightning did this last season. It destroyed, but it also cleared space for new life. You see the pattern? Death and life are inseparable here. One feeds the other. Humans survived not in spite of this but because of it." Corran lowered his eyes, shaken despite his pride. Kelric nodded slowly, his earlier curiosity shifting into awe. Ryler clutched his recorder as though it were a lifeline, mandibles clicking with frantic urgency. Vorik said nothing, though his wings drooped with something unfamiliar, humility. The journey back was quieter. The students no longer wasted words on bravado or dismissal. They walked with their senses alert, as though every leaf hid a threat. Hale led them at the same steady pace, unhurried, assured. When they finally reached the safety of the campus walls, they felt no relief, only the lingering weight of what they had seen. Hale turned, his expression unreadable. "You think you've grasped it, but you haven't. Today was controlled. Tomorrow won't be. Earth doesn't care if you're scholars or children. It tests everyone the same." He looked at each of them in turn, eyes like storm clouds that never cleared. "Remember that." No one answered. They entered their quarters in silence, but each carried the same thought unspoken: the galaxy's tales of Earth had not exaggerated enough. And tomorrow promised worse. The air was thin on the mountainside, sharpened by cold that sliced through protective layers and gnawed at alien lungs. The group had been climbing for hours, following a narrow trail carved into rock by forces older than civilization itself. Professor Hale moved steadily at the front, never breaking rhythm, his breath forming only faint wisps while the alien students gasped and staggered behind him. Vorik 10, feathers damp with frost, snapped at the silence. This is absurd. No intelligent species would choose to dwell in such hostile heights. Hale did not turn. And yet humans built settlements here thousands of years ago. They thrived on less than what you wear now. Corran braced against the cliff wall, his claws digging into the stone. There is no logic in such risk. Any misstep means death. Why persist? Because persistence is survival, Hale replied. He pointed ahead where the path curved around a jagged peak. The mountain doesn't care whether you live or die. You adapt, or you vanish. Humanity adapted. The group pressed on, their bodies strained to breaking point. Kelric, though stronger than the others, felt his legs tremble. Ryla's mandibles clicked frantically as he muttered data points into his recorder, half for study, half to drown the sound of his own fear. Every step pressed them further from the sterile comforts of their worlds and deeper into Earth's truth. The ground shuddered beneath them. At first it was a subtle tremor, like a distant heartbeat. Then the mountain roared. Rocks split from the cliffside, crashing down in a cascade of dust and thunder. The path crumbled underfoot, splitting wide as the students scrambled for purchase. Vorik shrieked as his talons slipped, wings flaring uselessly in the dense gravity. Hale was already moving. He lunged, seizing Vorik's arm and hauling him up with a strength that seemed impossible for his frame. "Move," he barked, driving them toward a ledge as the trail behind disintegrated into a landslide. Boulders crashed past, smashing trees into splinters below. By the time the rumbling ceased, they huddled together on a narrow outcropping, the path behind gone, the drop below a sheer death sentence. The aliens stared at Hale, shaken, breaths ragged. He stood with dust streaking his face, eyes cold but steady. "This is what I meant," he said. "Preparation fails. The mountain doesn't warn you. It doesn't negotiate. It demands you endure." Corran's voice cracked, the weight of arrogance stripped away. "You've lived with this, all your lives." Hale's jaw tightened. "Longer. Our ancestors faced worse with less. And they survived." A rustling sound broke the silence. From the tree line below, movement rippled. A massive shape emerged, fur dark against the snow. It was a bear, scarred and heavy with muscle, drawn by the noise of collapse. Its growl rolled upward like thunder, and when it reared back on its hind legs, it seemed as tall as the cliff face itself. The alien students froze. Vorik's feathers plastered tight against his body. Ryla whispered into his recorder, voice trembling, "Carnivore. Apex. Impossible mass and power. We are prey." The bear climbed with astonishing speed, claws gouging into rock. Hale picked up a length of shattered timber from the landslide, gripping it like a spear. "You can't fight that," Corran cried. Hale's gaze stayed locked on the beast. "Then we die standing." The bear lunged upward, jaws wide. Hale stepped forward, thrusting the makeshift weapon into its snout. The creature bellowed in rage, swiping with a paw that struck Hale across the chest. He staggered but did not fall. Blood seeped through his shirt. The aliens shrieked, their bodies paralyzed by terror. But Hale moved again, faster than reason suggested. He jammed the timber deeper, twisting, forcing the beast back. Rocks slid beneath his boots, but his grip was unyielding. The bear roared, finally retreating, shaking its head, then crashing down into the forest below. Silence returned, broken only by the labored breaths of the group. Hale leaned against the cliff, chest heaving, blood staining his jacket. He spat onto the ground, red mixing with dust. "This," he said hoarsely, "is Earth. Every living thing fights for survival. We fight harder." Kelric stared at him, eyes wide with something close to reverence. You fought it with nothing but wood and will. Ryler lowered his recorder slowly, his mandibles still trembling. Your species are predators disguised as scholars. Every instinct says to flee, but you advance. Vorik said nothing. The arrogance had drained from his posture, leaving only a quiet fear. Corran lowered his gaze, the certainty of his logic unraveling. Hale straightened, grimacing at the wound but refusing to falter. If you want to understand why Earth is called a Deathworld, don't look at the beasts or the storms. Look at us. Look at what this place made us. The sun dipped low, painting the mountains in crimson light. The aliens followed Hale in silence as he guided them along a new path, every step haunted by what they had witnessed. Their minds turned over the same truth again and again. Humanity was not merely surviving Earth's cruelty, it had become its reflection. And though the bear had vanished into the forest, its growl still echoed in their memory, joined now by something more unsettling, the realization that the most dangerous creature on the mountain had not been the beast at all, but the man who faced it unarmed and unafraid. The city was alive with motion, a tide of bodies surging through streets lit by neon and hammered by the noise of engines, voices, and the ceaseless pulse of human activity. To the alien students, it was overwhelming. To Professor Marcus Hale, it was home. He walked ahead of them with the same unhurried stride he carried in the mountains, unbothered by the chaos that pressed in from every side. This is your final lesson, he said over the roar of traffic. Not the wilderness. Not the storms or the beasts. This. He gestured to the sprawl of towers and streets, to the sheer density of people moving as though guided by unseen currents. Here, you see what happens when predators learn to build instead of only survive. Aaron Corran tried to study it with the same detached analysis he had once clung to in the forest, but his voice cracked with disbelief. They coexist in this density? The risks must be astronomical. Disease, violence, accidents. They happen, Hale interrupted. But so does progress. Civilization isn't peace. It's organized struggle. We turned survival into construction. Ryler Dax clicked his mandibles in agitation, antennae twitching as he scanned the crowd. Each human looks ready to fight or flee at any moment. And yet none do. It is restrained danger. A storm contained in flesh. Kelric Ven's scaled arms folded across his chest as he studied the passing humans. Some laughed, some shouted into devices, some carried burdens that seemed far too heavy, and yet none faltered. They carry the same defiance as their world. I see it now. The mountain, the storm, the beasts, those forged this. Vorik 10 had no words. His feathers lay flat against his body, wings tucked tight. The arrogance that had once defined him was gone, replaced with a hollow unease he could not articulate. Hale stopped in the middle of a crosswalk, the tide of people splitting around him as if unconsciously deferring to his presence. He turned to face the students. His grey eyes were hard, but his voice carried the weight of a conclusion rather than a lesson. You came here to learn why Earth is called a Deathworld. You've seen its storms, its predators, its violence. But none of that is the answer. The truth is simpler. The alien students leaned in despite themselves, caught in the gravity of his words. Earth tried to kill us every day. It failed. So we made its cruelty our strength. Every struggle sharpened us. Every loss taught us. And now, Hale swept his gaze across the skyline, towers gleaming like spears against the darkening sky. Now we build empires where there should be ruins. A sudden commotion erupted nearby. Tires screamed as a vehicle spun out of control, hurtling toward the sidewalk where the group stood. The alien students froze, instincts locking their limbs. Hale moved before thought had time to form. He shoved Corran and Ryler aside, grabbed Vorik by the shoulder, and yanked him clear. The machine skidded past with a metallic shriek, smashing into a barrier where sparks exploded in a shower of light. The crowd screamed. Humans rushed forward not to flee, but to help. Strangers pulled open doors, lifted debris, dragged the injured free. No one commanded them. No one hesitated. It was instinct as deep as hunger. The aliens stared, stunned not by the accident but by the response. Dozens of humans working together with an urgency and ferocity that looked more like battle than aid. Blood flowed, cries rose, but the people endured. Hale straightened, brushing dust from his jacket, his chest still marked by the scar from the bear's strike. He looked at the students, who had no words, no framework to fit what they had witnessed. Do you see now? We don't endure death because we're fearless. We endure because we fight it together. Alone we are fragile. Together we are indestructible. Kelrick lowered his head, voice reverent. Your people are forged in defiance. Ryla whispered into his recorder, the words trembling out of him. If Earth is a crucible, then humans are its tempered blades. To provoke them is to summon extinction. Vorik said nothing. His pride was shattered, his gaze haunted by the memory of Hale standing against the bear, against the storm, against even machines that defied control. He finally understood why the galaxy feared humans. Corrin, once so certain of logic and numbers, could only murmur, every statistic said you should not exist. Yet here you stand. Proof against probability. The sirens wailed in the distance as human responders rushed toward the wreckage. Hale turned back toward the skyline, the lights burning brighter against the dusk. His final words were calm, almost quiet, but they carried the weight of a verdict. You came here searching for why Earth is a death world. The truth is, Earth isn't the danger anymore. We are. The students fell silent, their thoughts tangled between awe and dread. They understood now that the galaxy's whispered warnings had not been tales spun of fear, but fragments of truth too immense to grasp from a distance. And as night fell over the human city, glowing with life against the darkness, they knew the lesson would follow them forever. Mankind had risen from a world designed to break them, and in doing so had become something the universe would never again underestimate.